Hello, everyone, and welcome to this GROW session on problem and purpose statements. I'm Dr. Bethany Pletcher. I'm an associate professor in the College of Education Human Development. I teach reading and curriculum courses at the undergraduate and graduate levels. And I'm glad to be here today to present you some information on writing your problem and purpose statements. So I have some notes here with me too that you'll probably see me refer to as we're going through the presentation. And of course, you can pause this at any time that you need to. So researchers move back and forth between their problem, their aim, their objectives, and their research questions. It's definitely not a linear process, as you probably know if you're working on your thesis and your dissertation, which you probably are at this point. We often go back and forth between all of those, especially if you're doing a qualitative study. You might go back and refine your research questions after you've combed through the literature. And you may go back to your problem statement several times and make sure that's nice and refined. And that's something we usually find with our dissertation students. So I always like to start these out with a comic, something to make us giggle, especially in these times. So you might recognize this research cycle: read, write, rinse, and repeat. I do a lot of rinsing myself. So hope you enjoyed that one. So first what we're going to talk about is the problem statement and coming up with that and what that looks like. So research problems may not just magically present themselves as these lovely, perfect, fully framed problems. We may come to see their existence over time. Maybe something draws our attention to a situation that we may not have been aware of at first, and so this creates a problem that we want to address, and that's exactly what a research problem is. It's a problem that we want to research. So a problem can be anything that you find unsatisfactory, maybe a little unsettling, a difficulty of some sort, something that needs to be changed. Maybe something's just not working as well as it might. Could even be something that you found just combing through the literature that's missing. Oftentimes, we tell students, you can get great, and even just us as researchers, we can get great ideas by reading research articles, and that piece in the research article that is included at the end, possibilities for future research. Here's something that's really missing in the literature, and that's a great place to start for something we might want to address. So research problems are usually identified from several sources, including the research literature, like I just mentioned, problems in practice or work-related contexts, and then your own personal biography or history. So really kind of depending on whatever your field is. And of course, I can speak from the field of education. We have a lot of problems in the field of education that need to be addressed. We'll always have problems in the field of education, whether you're talking about K through 12 or higher ed, adult education or education for children. There are always issues of practice in every discipline. So I'm sure you will not have a problem locating a problem to research. There are many, many ones out there, and problems that have been researched in many ways, shapes, and forms, but maybe there's a way that's kind of missing. In education, we talk a lot about applied research, because really a lot of the research that we base our practice on in schools, it might be misleading districts and teachers to do one thing, but what we really need to focus on is, does that theory or does that piece of information that people researched, is it really helping children or adolescents or whoever the population is to learn during actual instruction? Okay, so there are just so many ways to come at these. So we're going to think about a good problem statement and what that entails. And we're going to talk about how to go about writing a problem statement and we're going to look at a couple as well. So a good problem statement asks about a relationship between two or more variables, maybe how one thing affects another thing, maybe how two things are related, depending on, of course, the methods that you're using. Obviously, you want a problem statement to be clear. You need to do the work for your reader to understand exactly what problem it is that you are researching, that you are trying to get at. And maybe not even, we're not really looking at solving here, right? Solving the problem. We're just researching the problem, okay, and contributing more to the field regarding that problem. Problems should be testable, able to be researched, okay, by whatever chosen method you're using. And of course, you want your problem to dictate the method, not the other way around. It should be possible to collect data or information surrounding your problem, and in order to answer the questions that you're asking. And it really shouldn't represent, a huge moral or ethical position, especially where student work is concerned. You want your project, your problem statement, to be feasible and something that you can work on in the time that you have. Okay, so let's look at when we go to choose a problem, what are some things we need to consider? So one thing you want to consider is workability, your own resources, and your own time constraints. And as a master's or doctoral students, you definitely have those two things. You may not have, or probably don't have, a huge grant to pay participants or fellow researchers to work on this problem with you. So you need to consider that. Also, you are under a time constraint. We have restrictions on how much time we want to keep you here to work on your thesis or your dissertation. And of course, usually that time is much longer than we're hoping that you'll need. So you really want to consider that, those two things. Are you going to have access to the sample, the population, the materials, documents, whatever you're using to get at your problem? Okay, is that something you can either you have access to or you can access? And during these times, during the pandemic, I know a lot of our doctoral students have had to kind of change tack according to their research problems that they want to research, because before March, they were thinking they were going to maybe do one thing, especially with schools, and now that has all changed. So they're really having to consider, who they have access to and what's going to work best. Will you be able to do the methodology to tackle your problem? So is that something that is understandable to you and manageable for you? Oftentimes we get in our programs and we kind of figure out we're more of, we enjoy doing case studies or maybe ethnography or something else, or statistical research. And of course, depending on the course you choose to go, you'll want faculty members to work with you who are extremely knowledgeable in those areas. So that's something else you have to consider when you're considering a research problem as well. So critical mass is another thing to consider. This is where you want to think about the magnitude and scope that you're trying to fulfill, the requirement that motivated the study in the first place. So does the study target enough variables? Has it identified enough potential results? Is it going to give you enough to write about? So we often tell students you want a problem that there's not so much out there, that really doesn't leave you maybe a lot to look at unless you're going to, again, take a different tack or look at a certain population. But you also don't want to choose something that is just totally brand new, if there's not enough out there that you're really going to be able to locate and write about, especially, again, as a student. Remember, you've got to think about that feasibility. Interest, and that probably should be number one on this list. You're going to be working on this one problem, for a very long time, at least a couple of years. So one thing I was told as a doctoral student, and I tell our current doctoral students is, are you interested? Are you so interested in this that a year down the road, you're still going to be as enthused about it? So you really have to take a hard look at that question and think about that. Are you interested in the problem? Are you interested in a possible solution? Does it relate to your own background, to your career interests? You don't want to choose a problem and write about something that really has nothing to do with you and what you're all about and what you do and that you can even use in the future. Are you going to be able to learn useful skills and use skills that you already have in pursuing this study? And then, of course, interest also has to do with your audience. So is there an audience out there who's also going to be really interested in your problem that you're going to write about? Theoretical value. So you want to think about if the problem fills a gap in the literature, and I talked about that a little bit more a while ago. And of course, that feeds right into that literature review and really being thorough with what's out there. Picking up every rock and seeing what lies underneath it, what has already been done, what's already out there, and maybe what's missing. Okay. Will others recognize that as well? Will others say, yeah, that is definitely an issue that's arisen in this field or related to this problem? Will your problem that you're trying to look at, will it contribute to your field? Will it contribute to advancement in your field? Will it move your field forward? We always tell doctoral students it might not change the world, your dissertation. That's okay, but it should press things a little bit and move what you're trying to do forward. Okay. Will it lead to a publishable report? Hopefully so. We try not to let our doctoral students out of here, and even many of our master students, without publishing something related to what they studied. That's part of the research process, is dissemination. So how are you going to get this work out there? Okay. And then, of course, practical value. Will the solution to this problem, or you're writing about this problem, will it improve practice in some way? And of course, that might be more relevant in some fields than others, especially in the field of education. We're always looking at, yes, does it have theoretical value, but really, what might it mean for practice? Okay. Will your own practice change as a result as well? Okay, so these are all things to think about when you're looking at choosing a problem. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about what a problem statement has, what it does or maybe doesn't do. So problem statement really should use a narrative hook. This might even be how you begin your thesis or your dissertation or a future research article. That's what's, whenever I read a research article, and I tried to read a few a week for sure, that those first few sentences are what's always going to do it, right? It's going to pull us in, just like a good piece of fiction, okay? So try to entice your reader with and grab them from the very beginning. A problem statement also conveys a distinct research problem or issue, and again, we talked about that a little bit before. So the problem should be very apparent to your reader. Clearly identifies the issue or problem that leads to a need for the study. So it's not just laid out as, okay, here's a problem, but it's laid out in a way that the reader knows, okay, something's coming up here. Now the author of this study is going to lead into, okay, what am I going to study to address this problem? Okay. Refrain from using quotations in the problem statement. I mean, you might use one. If you do, don't use a blocked, especially long quote. You're going to use citations for sure and cite evidence for your problem, but you need to do that in your own words. Okay. Stay away from using trite phrases or idioms. And what I mean by this is oftentimes, especially in student writing, we see writers kind of go into that informal kind of editorial or opinion territory and use, figurative language or just language. And I make this kind of face because whenever I see it in academic writing, I always kind of go, oh, no, that just doesn't go there. So, keep it academic and formal, okay? And have somebody read. Obviously, you'll want several people reading your problem statement to make sure that informal language is not there. That colloquial language, I guess, is a good word for it too. You might use numeric information for impact. We see that a lot in research. Looking at percentages of a certain population that you're looking at. Those numbers can really hit home and draw your reader in if you use those in your problem statement that really talks, we often see it when we talk about emergent bilinguals and the increase in percentages of emergent bilinguals in our classrooms, okay? Problem statement indicates why the problem is important by citing, numerous references that justify the need to study the problem. So it's not just all about you and you talking about your opinion. You're going to cite other authors and information from all this reading that you're doing to back up this problem that you're presenting and talk a little bit about why it's important. So it's important not just because I think it's important, but it's important because here's the need as cited in the literature. Okay. Problem statement frames the problem in a manner consistent with the approach to the research in the study. So that means if you're working on a primarily quantitative study, your problem statement should really kind of lead into that versus a qualitative study. So again, you're letting your methods dictate what your problem statement is going to look like. Clear rationale, that should be obvious. Why? What is of course you're going to get to that more in chapter 5 and later, the so what of your project, but you need to include some of that here, and it's kind of a nice bookend or framing effect too. Obviously, problem statement contains your narrow topic of interest, has a research question or leads into a research question that's not just going to call for a yes or no answer. And then a problem statement is these three things: clear, concise, compelling. So it clearly communicates just the whole essence of your dissertation or your thesis. It's going to obviously guide your dissertation or thesis because your study is based on this problem, right? It is concise. It's brief. Okay, this is not a huge, massive section. It's not the whole first chapter. You want to grab the attention of your reader and keep them focused on your focus statement. And then obviously compelling. It's compelling to both you and to your audience, and they want to read more. So again, and this is just kind of going to reiterate what we already talked about a little bit, but when you're developing your problem statement, consider also what is your project about? Why? What's your why? Why are you conducting this project? Why would anyone care? Why should you care about your subject, your problem? What's the bigger picture, the context, conditions that make it important to go after this topic? When you're finished with the project, what is the one point that you want to leave with your readers? And I think this is important to think about even as you're writing your problem statement, which is going to be in your first chapter. You still want to kind of think ahead a little bit about this. And then what will be the contributions or implications of your dissertation? So these are really some questions that take some thinking about, that you'll really want to sit down and just maybe even think out loud, talk out loud to yourself about your answers to these questions with a peer, with a faculty member that you're working with, and then do some writing as well. That can be very helpful. Okay, so here are some steps to develop a clear and functional problem statement. Obviously, you'll want to identify a research topic, and that alone is going to take some time. Read enough that you're able to refine your topic as a problem. So you start with this larger topic and something you're looking at, and you're going to start to funnel down into, okay, what is the problem that I want to look at? Then you'll start making decisions about your methodology. And this should be kind of familiar to you depending on what stage you're at in your thesis or your dissertation. I have some students who that's about where we are right now, make a decision about the methodology. Okay, now that we have met several times, they've written, they've researched, they've studied to find out, okay, here is what specifically I want to look at. Okay. Then you're going to decide what type of problem statement might be most appropriate, because again, according to these first three bullets, your problem statement might look a little bit different. So again, you want to state your problem as clearly as possible. That's where the refining is going to need to come in, and you're probably going to rewrite this many times. I've even seen students write it at the defense stage, and that's okay. Because you went in with your problem and you understood it, maybe your committee even understood it, but then as we look at it more and after you have conducted your study, there may be some tweaking that needs to be done. Again, it's a fairly brief section, but it's critical. If you don't have a strong problem statement and you don't know your why and what you're doing, obviously that's going to cause everything else to break down with your study. And then again, the way you state your problem will influence the way you present and summarize your results. Okay. So here's where I was talking about you have several choices about the way the problem is stated. So these next few slides, that's what these go into. So this one, if you're using research that uses a hypothesis, you may have these hypotheses, okay? So here are some examples. The first one, there is a positive relationship between students' use of computers and learning mathematics and their achievement in mathematics. Obviously, we're looking at a relationship here, so this will probably be some sort of maybe experimental research. Sorry, I just noticed a typo here. Sorry about that. Students retained in first grade will have lower achievement in mathematics than those who are promoted. And then the last one, there is a positive relationship between first grade students' achievement in reading and the time parents spend reading to them at home. Okay, so you can see these are all clear problems and related hypotheses, and so that might be one way that you're going to approach your problem statement. You may have research questions and hypotheses. So here are some examples. Does teacher involvement in decision-making affect teachers' morale? And then here are hypothesis statements. Teacher involvement in decision-making varies from school to school within a district. Teacher involvement in decision-making varies with decision-making content, and teacher involvement in decision-making affects morale in a positive direction only in certain schools and only with certain types of decision-making content. So there's another option. You might have a single question. In what ways do students use the internet when they are working independently on the computer? And of course, this really signals to the reader that this is most likely some sort of either qualitative study or mixed study because of the in what ways, right? It kind of leaves all of these possibilities open with the plural use of ways. You may also have a general question followed by two or more specific questions. So we see this all the time with our doctoral students too in their dissertations, that they have maybe three questions that are kind of equal weight, or they'll have one question and then some sub-questions underneath, right? Such as this one. So the main question is the curriculum audit an effective and feasible tool for educational change? And then the sub-questions are, is the audit feasible in terms of fiscal costs? Is the audit feasible in terms of participant time? Is the audit effective in the change process from the perspective of administration? So again, depending on your methods and how best to approach your problem that you're trying to look at and research, that will kind of dictate how your problem statement is going to be written. Okay, so you're ready to write your problem statement. You're raring to go here. So here are some tips and some other things to think about in addition to what we've already talked about. Again, talk it through first and then write about it. And like I said, talk to yourself, talk to other people, talk to people who really don't even, might not even understand your field, right? Sometimes they can give you some extra insight. And definitely writing. Writing has to be a part of this. Making notes somewhere, just your own notes that you're going to read will help you get your juices flowing with your problem statement. Engage in free writing while thinking about the focus statement. So just sit down with pencil and paper and just don't think too hard. Kind of get out of your head a little bit and just write. That's what a free write is. And again, that can be a super helpful strategy. Write your focus statement in first person. So this can be a little more natural and a way for you to really own your writing and own your problem statement. If you're writing, here's what I'm thinking, here's what I'm proposing to do, here's what I see as a central issue, okay? Obviously, continually revisit your focus statement. It's not a one and done kind of deal. And then you can start to gain insight into your area of focus through a lot of self-reflection. So you can explore your understanding of these things here. The theories that impact your practice. These are things that I try to read about all the time, and I'll give you an example. Right now in my field, I teach mainly reading courses, and the science of teaching reading is a very hot topic right now. So I am spending a lot of time reading articles from experts in the field about the science of reading and really trying to understand, theories that I've read about and I've learned about and known about for years, but that I really need to revisit. Okay, and then the theories that you hold. You're writing this in first person. This is your problem statement. You don't want to write about something that you're not that interested about and not enthused about. Think about what your experiences are and the theories that you've used in your own field work, whatever that may be. Think about how your work fits into a larger context, and that's a super important piece, because if it's just something that two people might find interest in, that's going to be more difficult than writing about a problem that many people see as a problem. Today I had a meeting earlier with a group of like-minded professionals, a part of a special interest group we're in, and it was interesting to hear somebody talk about pandemic teaching, and then a couple of others, of us say, yes, we're seeing that too. That really needs to be studied, that needs to be talked about, and it's super important. So we were really seeing how what we were talking about fit into that larger context. This obviously has more to do with our education field, but I threw it in there anyway. Historical context of your school and schooling, or historical context of your field, whatever it may be. Those of you in psychology or in the sciences or liberal arts, what's the history of what you're studying? That's so important to look at what has come before. Okay, and then how you arrived at your beliefs and the theories you hold should be an important part of this, whether you include it in the final report or not. Okay, and then gain insight into your area of focus through descriptive activities. This is where you want to try to describe the situation that you're looking at by focusing on who, what, when, where, how, all of these questions. The evidence that you have that this issue really is a problem that you're going to write in your problem statement. And again, this goes back to, yes, it's something you've seen as an issue, something that's been unsettled with you, but something that you're finding in the larger literature that has come up before that is an issue. And then gain insight into your area of focus through explanatory activities. So we talked about exploratory, descriptive, and now explanatory. And again, that's really focusing on the why. Okay. And then, thinking about your own feelings and your own motives for believing that this is a research problem that you can look at, and your own biases as well. Okay, so on the next, I believe, let me see, 3 slides here, I have 3 examples of problem statements. They're all a little bit different. They all came from, each one came from a published research article. They are from my field because that's what I know. What I know. And in a little bit, we'll talk about an exercise that you can do. But what I would like you to do, and you can pause this video and work on this as you want to, is read these problem statements and see, and I think I even have it written here. Well, so what you could do is think about what we already talked about with problem statements and see if you can find evidence of some of those things, such as, and the 3 examples that I provided here. Is there a narrative hook? Do you see the problem? Is the problem evident in what the authors are presenting? Can you say, oh, I see what they're trying to get at. This is the issue. The refraining from quotations and trite phrases and idioms, do you see that? Do you see any numeric information? Do you see the citing of numerous references? Have they framed the problem in a manner consistent with the approach to the research in the study? Do you see the rationale? Do you see also, maybe the passion from the authors? Can you tell, okay, they are really vested in this problem they're presenting? Is the topic of interest, is the problem narrow enough? There may be a research question in these or may not, I can't remember. But even so, you should be able to tell, okay, are they looking for simple yes or no answers? And is the problem statement clear, concise, and compelling? Okay, so what I'd like you to do with those 3 problem statements is kind of apply those criteria and see if you're seeing some of that. Okay, and so I just kind of grabbed these pieces from these articles again. Then, as a extension of that exercise, read some problem statements in journal articles related to the work you're currently doing right now. So if you're currently in, and I'm assuming you probably are, working on a thesis or a dissertation, pick up some of the articles that you've been reading as part of your literature review and apply these same criteria to the problem statement. And see if you can pick out the problem statement from those articles. Often in a dissertation or thesis, we actually say problem statement, right, or statement of the problem. You might not see that in an article, but can you find it? It should be there. It's supposed to be there in a research article. So it'll be interesting to see if you can find those pieces in articles related to your discipline. What was the other thing I was gonna say? Oh, and maybe if you're not quite at that point yet, pick out some pieces that maybe professors have had you read in as part of classes. I'm sure they've had you read some research articles related to your discipline, so you could use some of those. So, find something that you're interested in, so you can kill 2 birds with 1 stone and learn something. And then so pause the video, do that. You can always come back to the second part of the presentation later after you've worked on exercises for problem statement. So now we're going to talk about the purpose statement. So problem statement, again, is, we already covered that. That's your central problem, what it is exactly you're looking at and why it's important and rationale. Purpose statement is even more concise. And this is what the purpose of your study is, and stating that. And this quote here, I really like: unless its research purposes are clear, concise, and manageable, a study is unlikely to succeed. And now I realize I do not have a citation there, and now I can't remember where it came from. It might have come from Creswell. So what is a purpose statement? So research purpose should refer to observable behaviors and be sufficiently specific to guide the planning and make it possible for you to conduct the research. It establishes the intent of the entire study. It's really the most important statement in the entire study. Again, because if it's going to guide what you're doing, it needs to be, it's a crucial piece. This is usually about the last part of the introduction. And it talks about why you want to do this study and what you intend to accomplish. So the purpose builds on a need, which is the problem, and that's refined into specific questions, the research questions. So you have your larger problem. Here's then the purpose of my study and my research questions here, okay? And this is something you really want to talk to faculty member or chair about as far as the organization of the first chapter and where this purpose statement goes. You'll see it in different places in articles, depending on the journal, depending on your field. So that's really going to be up to whoever is guiding your project that you're doing. Okay. So what I'm going to share from you now, share with you now, mainly comes from Creswell and the research design text. And let me grab it and I'll show it to you. You can see what it looks like. Mine is an older edition, but it's great nonetheless. Research design, qualitative, quantitative, and mixed methods approaches by John Creswell. This is the 4th edition, and it's incredibly. Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. I'm on campus, and it is nice to see everybody though. Back to Creswell. We tell our doctoral students all the time, if they do not have that book, to please get it. It will make their lives so much easier when working on your purpose statement. And he provides scripts, which I've copied and pasted into this presentation. So, of course, I'm crediting him for, in that book, Research Design, for all of those scripts. So you can also go there to find the scripts, or the templates, scripts or templates. So let's first talk about the qualitative purpose statement, and then we'll talk about quantitative and mixed, which is kind of the way he breaks it down. So your qualitative purpose statement contains information about a central phenomenon explored in the study, the participants, and the research site. You're going to actually use the words purpose, intent, or objective. So you're making it super clear, this is the purpose statement. You set the statement off as a separate sentence or paragraph. It gets its own shining moment in your larger report. Okay. You're also using the language of research. So you're going to use your methods and participants, and the language that you use should reflect the design, the methods, the study design that you've chosen, okay, for your study. You'll use past. Now, you'll use future tense if you're writing a proposal, like if you haven't proposed yet. But when you submit your actual, whole dissertation or thesis, it's going to be in past tense. So you'll just have to go back and change everything. Your purpose statement is going to focus on a single phenomenon, the idea that we already talked about in the problem statement, where you've narrowed your study to one idea to be explored or understood. Notice the words explored, understood, tell us that it's a qualitative study. Use action verbs to convey how the learning will take place. So are you exploring? Are you determining, whatever it is the goal of your study is. Keep your inquiry open and convey an emerging design. Okay, so again, we're talking about the qualitative purpose statement because those things may shift a little bit. Use neutral words and phrases. Provide a general working definition of a central phenomenon or idea. And again, include words that state that the qualitative research strategy that will be used. So, what keywords can you include that have to do with the methods that you're using? You'll mention briefly who the participants are, the research site, even just a general site, and include some language that delimits the scope of the participation. So who exactly is participating, and who is that limited to? Okay, so here's the script or the template that I was talking about from Creswell. This is one for a qualitative purpose statement script, and this should really help you in drafting a statement. So as you can see, the purpose of this what strategy or of inquiry study is, to understand, explore, develop, discover, etc. The blank, which is the central phenomenon, for who, what participants, at where. At this stage in the research, the blank will be generally defined as, and you can give a short definition. Okay, so that's just a leveling. Of course, there might be some variations on this. This is just a script to guide you. I usually kind of end up shifting some of this language, but this makes it extremely apparent to your reader what the intent of your study is. Okay, then moving on to a quantitative purpose statement. Same things apply here as qualitative, just a shift in the language and what you're including. So for a quantitative purpose statement, for a quantitative study, you'll include the variables and their relationship, the participants, the research site, if there is one, and any language, obviously, that's associated with quantitative research. And faculty member, if you're a thesis student or if you're a doctoral student, you should have a methods person on your committee who will really help you dig into this language and, work with you on, okay, if you use the word affect, you're really talking about, maybe quantitative research, how one thing affects another thing, okay? Or the effect of an intervention. Okay, so you'll have particular language that you're going to want to use. Again, include words signal the intent of the study, purpose, intent, or objective. Include your theory, model, conceptual framework, and your independent and dependent variables, control variables. Obviously, you can see how this already is a little bit different from the qualitative purpose statement, right? Position the order or order the variables from left to right with independent variable followed by the dependent variable, and you'll see that in the script. Mention the specific type of strategy of inquiry used in the study, and make reference to the participants or whatever it is you're studying. Maybe it's documents or data or something, and mention the research site if there is one. And generally define each key variable, preferably using definitions that you've found in the literature that you can cite. Okay. So here's the script that goes along with that. The purpose of this blank study is to test the theory of blank that describes outcomes or compares relates the independent variable to the dependent variable, controlling for blank for the participants at the research site. The independent variable blank will be defined as blank, so you're defining your variables here. Okay, so you can see this goes right along with the quantitative purpose description on the previous slide. And then, of course, he's helped us out with mixed methods purpose statement. So with these, again, they contain the overall intent of the study, have information about both qualitative and quantitative strands of the study, and a rationale. Again, they begin with words that signal intent, indicate the overall purpose of the study from a content perspective, so the reader can understand the overall study. Include which type of mixed methods design. This is something you should know. There are several different kinds, and there are statements I've included here for each one. But depending on the design you've chosen, whether it's explanatory, sequential, or exploratory, sequential, integrated, you'll want to make sure that's evident in your purpose statement. Okay, and then you'll have to do some work and discuss why. Readers want to know why you combined quantitative and qualitative data, why you made those decisions. So here's the purpose statement script that goes along with this. Now, I'm not going to read these to you, but I'll show you what's on each slide just so you can look at these. This first one is for a convergent mixed method strategy, where you have quantitative and qualitative data that are analyzed separately, but then they're merged together. Okay, so you might want to pause and read this script. Okay. This one is for a explanatory sequential design in which you are using quantitative data first, and then you're going a little bit deeper by following up with collecting some qualitative data. So maybe a survey followed by a focus group interview or something like that. Okay, so that purpose statement is going to look a little bit different than the previous one. And I'll let you pause and read that one. And this one is for an exploratory sequential design. So where you start first by collecting your qualitative data, and then you want to use that data to then maybe design a survey, some sort of instrument, test, measure, whatever, and test that with a sample or a population. And so your purpose statement's going to look a little bit different there as well. So I'll let you pause and read that one. Okay. Here are some purpose statement examples. This one I included just because I like how they, you can see how brief these are, by the way, and these don't exactly follow the templates that I just showed you, but you can still kind of get the gist. Here's one that lacks specificity. The research purpose is to explore the effectiveness of the ABC career planning program for students. That's kind of broad, a little general. I kind of get the gist, but I'm not really getting exactly what the research purpose is and what the researchers are setting out to do. So here's one that's a little bit better. The research purpose is to determine how effective the ABC career planning program is in helping students identify career options that are consistent with their interests and talents. So now we've dug in a little bit more and hopefully explain that better in our problem statement as well. Okay, so then what I've done here, you see these three examples. These correlate with the three examples of problem statements that I provided earlier in the presentation. So problem statement 1 goes with purpose statement 1, problem statement 2 goes with purpose statement 2, and problem statement 3 goes with purpose statement 3. So you can kind of go back and match those up. And so what I'll let you do is pause and look at each of those examples. Okay, and as you're looking at those three examples, you might go back to the templates that were provided and see if you can tell what what's going on with the purpose statement here. And you may see a little bit of problem statement embedded in here as well. Like for this one, their hypotheses are included here, but you should see some evidence of a purpose statement as well, like who the participants are, the research site, what exactly is going on, and then whether you think the study might be qualitative, quantitative, or mixed methods. And then finally, another exercise that would be beneficial for you to do at this point is to practice writing a purpose statement for your proposed study. Using one of the scripts presented. Like I said, those scripts are extremely helpful. That's why I've provided them here. And even if you're not quite sure, what the research design of your study is going to be yet, or you haven't really narrowed a problem, it's still a good exercise to practice and write a purpose statement. I would also encourage you to, again, look back in articles that you've read, and maybe other theses or dissertations, and find their purpose statements. See if you can locate the purpose statements in those articles for what their studies are all about. Okay, so you can pause and work on that. And then finally, again, just like we started off with something funny, I want to leave with something funny. Here's to no more dissertation-related crying, probably. So there may always be thesis or dissertation-related crying, and it's totally natural and normal. So I hope you enjoyed this presentation, and I look forward to any questions that you might have, anything that you want to share or run by me, and about problem statements or purpose statements. So, okay, I'm signing off. Have a good one.